Hey guys, Scott here. Let's go over the good and bad of patch 6.5.0 for Dead by Daylight, and luckily it is mostly good. Let's start with all of the good stuff. First up is the solo queue changes. The little communication icons are honestly very helpful. And I know I always say that communication doesn't make your teammates suddenly good, and that's true. But if you have a teammate of a certain skill, and then you have a teammate of a certain skill with communication, it's going to be a little bit better when you have communication. So it's still an improvement for solo queue, which is something that is needed to happen for a very long time. And I think one of the most understated side effects of this new system is it will actually make survivors overall better at the game over time. Because if you're kind of new to the game, having an icon there, you don't really know what to do with the information that you have. It's not quite as important. But when you learn how to use that information and optimize your play based on that information, it becomes a lot more useful overall. And I think overall people will learn to do this over time. And I'm already seeing like little scenarios that you would never even think of. Like if you see a guy getting chased or something like that, and then he starts healing, you can sort of assume that means that guy stopped getting chased. And obviously the little tentacle icons will go away too. But then you can also think like, if 5 seconds later that guy gets hit again, that maybe there was like a tinkerer proc or they have some type of stealth or something like that, because why else would they heal right in the killer's face? Like there are like little assumptions you can make from this, and in your head you can start calculating like, okay, it could be this, it could be this, and you just start getting more information than you think you do. And I'm noticing that the more and more I play in solo queue with this stuff, just having those little tidbits of information, it narrows down a lot of possibilities quite a bit. And over time, once people start making these connections in their brain, I think solo queue will actually, the quality of the players themselves will increase over time, just as a natural side effect of the system, which I think is great, because the real problem is just getting bad teammates. And if you're playing solo queue, you're rolling the dice, chances are you're going to get some bad teammates. And the fix for this would be an accurate matchmaking system, but that's never going to happen. So this is the next best thing. And I think it sort of coaches people into, because like if you see an icon and you see, an action that someone's doing, and then you see the result of that action, even if you're not consciously paying attention to it, in your brain, you're going to draw that, connection and think, okay, for next time when I see that again, that means this. And I think that is overall useful stuff. Another little thing you can do if you're not like on a generator, you can see people working on generators with their little icon. And if someone's about to get hooked, if you see that icon go away for a second and then come back, it means your teammates have figured out that they have pain resonance or something like that. That's what I'm talking about. There's like little nuances that you can over time pick up that will give you way more information than you think you have. So the system is really, really nice. They are also rumored to be adding generator progress to that, which would honestly make solo queue significantly easier. It wouldn't make it easy. It would still be the weakest role, but it would be significantly easier. But they could also possibly buff Survive with Friends a tiny bit too. So that's why I'm a bit hesitant about it. But I mean, it could be fine too. So I don't really know. So yeah, solo queue changes are really good. Next, the Area Crow changes I think are also pretty decent. I only played on it 3 times, but I didn't really notice anything super glaringly wrong with it. They chopped off the whole back section of the map. They moved the shack to the other corner. But other than that, it just seems like it's a bit smaller. There's a bit less pallets, a bit less connected tiles, 1 or 2 more dead zones. So it is definitely more killer-sided. Whether it is killer-sided overall, I'm not really sure yet. I've only played on it, like I said, 3 or 4 times. I just have a instinctual bad feeling when I burned the offering as Survivor. Like I still feel guilty, even though I don't think it's that bad anymore. But overall, it's an improvement. I can absolutely say it's an improvement over the old Area Crows. Now, if we can get the same treatment for Garden of Joy, I think everyone will be very happy, because those are the 2 standout maps right now that are new and really terrible. But yeah, Eerie does seem a lot better. Next, the changes to Nurse. Nurse has been nerfed. Nurse is weaker than before. She cannot rely on things like NOED or Devour Hope or Starstruck Agitation and all that good stuff. And that's great. They also nerfed by entirely removing her range and recharge add-ons, which is also good. She does have 1 or 2 add-ons that is a little sus, as the kiddies say. And I'm not sure if those are going to end up being too strong over time, but we'll see. But overall, the Nurse is weaker, and that's something that needed to happen. She is still, in my opinion, the strongest killer at the game, but I think for the very first time in the game's history, I think we can safely say that with their strongest add-ons and at their strongest level, Blight is now kind of on par with Nurse, because Nurse's add-ons have been kind of weakened mostly to the point where we still have insane things like Alcrang and Adrenaline Vial and Compound 33 on Blight that puts Blight kind of on the same level. I think on a very large map, Blight and Nurse are now sort of equal, which is pretty impressive. So that is honestly great to see. Other than that, a couple of bug fixes. Behavior still hates the twins, which is hilarious, but I also feel bad for the 3 twins players. And that's pretty much the good stuff. Oh yeah, one more thing. The actual cosmetics they released are pretty cool. The whole Birkin skin from Blight is awesome. But I mean, they usually nail it with that stuff, so that's not even much to talk about there. They're usually really good with aesthetics and cosmetics and stuff like that. You'll notice the main thing I have not talked about yet is the Knight, and the Knight falls under the bad section because the Knight is still just as problematic as before. So what they did with the Knight is they made it so the longer that your guard's path that you're drawing out, you get a haste buff now based on how long that actual path is. And that sounds cool in theory because you think, okay, that might incentivize you to draw out longer paths. And also when you draw out longer paths, the guards will go from the spawning in phase to the chasing phase a bit faster. It's not that much faster, but it's a little bit faster. Also, this is based off of the distance of the actual path you draw, not off of the distance between you and where the path ends, which means you can be at a loop and just run circles around the loop and you'll get the 10 seconds of haste rather than, it's not based on the distance, it's based on the length of the path itself, which I found interesting. But none of these change the fact that the Knight still exemplifies the absolute worst parts of Dead by Daylight. This is not really an issue of too strong or too weak. It's just sort of like the old Spirit. It's an issue of just bad design. And what he exemplifies are, what is Knight good at? I don't go watch Hens' video where he holds the game hostage for an hour with a slowdown setup in a 3-gen. Knight is extremely good at drawing games out with a 3-gen setup. And that is not something we want to exemplify. That's not something we want to happen. We don't want hour-long games against the Knight. That's not fun. That's probably not even fun for the killer at that point. It's just a long, drawn-out, boring mess that nobody wants. So that is one thing he's good at. And the thing is, he's not even that much better than most other killers. You know what's really good about a Knight doing a 3-gen build? Not the Knight. It's the 4 slowdowns you're running in a 3-gen. That's going to be good on pretty much every killer in the game. I can think of a bunch of killers that can really hold the game hostage in that scenario. And it's not really just a Knight thing. Now, the Knight can pressure 2 places at once, which makes it a bit stronger for him, but it's not like it's really... That's more of a statement on the slowdown meta, not really just a Knight himself. So I don't even think he's that good at that. It's just the slowdowns in general that are really the problem. What else is he good at? If you're in a corner, then the Knight is uncounterable. Even if you're at a long wall jungle gym or you're in the shack, it doesn't matter. If you're in a corner and you can't hold W when he drops his power, you are going to get hit every single time. It is completely uncounterable, which is, again, bad. That's why everyone hated Old Legion. Guaranteed hits are just stupid. You shouldn't ever have that. So that just feels bad, too. And I had a lot of people that play Knight in my chat trying to, give me information on, give me strats for things to do. So I tried using the power for area denial instead, right? The problem is if you use the power for area denial by drawing a long path, you don't really benefit so much from the haste that much. Haste in a chase is extremely useful. Haste just walking to the other end of the map, it'll save you a couple of seconds. It's not that big of a deal. I did an experiment a long time ago of seeing how long it takes to run across the map with a Huntress compared to a Hillbilly, 110 versus 115, and the Huntress took 4 more seconds. It's really not that big of a difference. What it is a big difference is when you're chasing someone and the speed differential is different, then it's huge. But if you're not actively chasing someone with it, it's not that big of a deal. So using it for map control basically just renders you without a power. Yeah, it might land on somebody and it might occupy that guy's time for X amount of seconds, and that's cool, but now you don't have a power. You're just chasing whoever's near you with nothing. You're just man with sword, and that's not very powerful. Also, there's a killer who can actually pressure people at a distance too, way better, and it's Artist. Artist can just shoot birds forever. Also, it takes 0 seconds to actually... She doesn't have to draw out a pass. She just aims and shoots at a bird. And now that bird lands on somebody, and they have to just cleanse the birds off. And the Artist still has 2 birds left. She can still pressure other people nearby. She has unlimited range on it, and it takes basically no time to do it. Basically, if we're talking about the map control aspect of it, by doing that, he's just 10 times worse than Artist in every way. And I'm like, what's even is the point of playing a killer like that when you can just play Artist, who's vastly better at doing exactly what you're describing? So I don't even think he's that good at that. And people were still trying to give me other little tidbits. Okay, when you down somebody, then use your power and bring him to a generator. So now it's sort of free pressure, right? Because now you're pressuring somebody there. I mean, you have to kind of gamble that someone's on that generator, but after you down someone, try to get that free pressure. But even then, it's not free pressure because then you have to down somebody, which means you were probably using your power, because how else are you going to down somebody with you have no power? So that means your power is going to be on cooldown. It's a pretty fast recovery. It's like 4 seconds after you kill somebody. But that means you have to down them. You have to sit there and wait 4 seconds. And you have to plant your sword in the ground. And you have to fly your little green orb somewhere. And you have to come back to your character. Then you have to pick them up. Like over time, this is going to add up to a lot of wasted time. Those seconds matter. And you're taking a gamble that where you end up with the orb even has somebody to pressure. Because if it doesn't, now you're just going to have a useless patrolling guard and you still have no power again to actually down people. I've always said the best slowdown in the game is downing survivors. That is by far the most important thing. That's why Nurse and Blight, for example, don't even need slowdown because they can down people so fast. That's its own slowdown. You don't need to stack slowdowns on top of it because they can already down people so fast, and that's the strongest slowdown there is in the game. Knight doesn't have that lethality. Unless you're in a corner of the map, the correct play against Knight is always just running away. If he does a really long power usage, you still just run away. If he does a short power usage, you still just run away. You just do the same play every single time against the Knight until eventually you get to a corner of the map, at which point now you're guaranteed to be hit. And that's just, like, probably the worst offender for Knight, in my opinion, is I never feel impressed with myself when I make a play, ever. I have no incentive to get good at the Knight because there's nothing skillful that the Knight can do. I will never get a cool long-range hunter shot or a cool, double, charge Wesker or a cool, like, long-range dash with Demogorgon or, like, a cool, chainsaw sprint or a cool anything. Like, there's nothing interesting that the Knight can do. There's no incentive to get good at the Knight because there is no getting good at the Knight. He has no skill ceiling. His skill ceiling is an inch off the ground. I said the opposite of what is the case. And there's just nothing skillful you can do with the killer. And I think that's the most offensive part about the killer. There's nothing that I can do where I feel like, damn, I've gotten really good at the Knight. Because you're already good at the Knight if you played him for 5 seconds. And that's, I think, the most offensive part. And none of these changes really affect that. So if you use your power in a really, long drawn out sense, you will get a, like a 10-second haste buff, which is cool. But like I said, it doesn't really do much unless as you're channeling that, there's another survivor just watching you. And now you can chase them 10% faster. That's actually really nice if someone's nearby and you can split up like that. But if you're just sitting there channeling your power, why would a survivor just be sitting there watching you do it? They're just going to run somewhere else, at which point the haste does not offset the distance you just lost trying to set that up. So overall, none of these changes to the Knight actually fix anything about the killer. They do make him feel a bit nicer to play, and the quality of life for what he does do is a bit nicer, but it doesn't change the fact that his design is a complete failure. He's the worst killer design in the game since Old Legion, and I'm confident in that fact. There's just no real enjoyable aspects to him, in my opinion, for either side. So if that's the case, then I really consider the killer a failure, and no amount of changes to quality of life, haste buffs, and quicker spawns and things like that are really going to change anything about that. So overall, patch was great, except for the Knight, who continues to be an absolute failure, in my opinion, which is a shame because I'm kind of getting bored of DBD because we've had nothing new. I don't even consider the Knight a killer. He's just something just got shit out onto our laps, and I don't know. I feel like we haven't had a new killer since Wesker at this point. So I've been feeling kind of burnt out and playing less and less. So that's probably why I have so much disdain for the Knight too, because it's coming at a time of burnout as well when I really needed something like a new Wesker, like a really fun killer to play and like try to learn and stuff like that. But we just didn't get that, and we're not going to be getting something else. We're not going to roll the dice again for another month and a half. So I am slightly pessimistic about that because of how bad they screwed up the Knight. But overall, the patch itself, standing back, looking at it objectively, is actually pretty great. It's just the Knight that is, in my opinion, not so good. That's it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.